what's your top tip for tax year end? So we've kind of touched on some of it there, but I'll just go around and Jeff, have you got a particular top tip for tax year end, which is what did you make of the spring statement and its impact it would have on the cost of living crisis? Oh, because Alwyn's written in to say, should I be asking for a pay rise right now? So a nice easy question for you, someone. Should we be asking for a pay rise right now? Prize, you presenter of the week. Now I should just say, I'm a little bit protective of this sort of thing. This is for morning markets. So you win the award. This doesn't include the podcast. Just before you get. Hello everyone and welcome back to another True Potential Do More With Your Money podcast. It's episode 110 today and it's a question and answer podcast. So thank you for all the questions you've been sending in. We've got them all here and we're going to aim to get through as many as we can over the next half an hour or so with the people who know how to answer them. So let's meet them. We've got Jeff back on the podcast this week. Hi Jeff. You okay?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Enjoying the weather?
Yes, very much so.
Very nice, isn't it?
Yes.
Let's hope it lasts. Hayley's on the podcast as well. Hi Hayley.
I am. Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good week?
Good week. Good
I'm
month.
asking you.
Good month, yes.
Why has it been so good? What have you been doing?
Nice weather.
Yeah.
House renovations. Feel like I'm getting on top of my life admin. So all in all, a good week.
You're flying along, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Good.
It's a good week.
And making a podcast debut today, we've got someone on the show. Hi, someone.
Hi, Peter.
Are you all right?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Now, there is a bit of a tradition on the podcast that if it's your first one, you should know, because I know you've been watching them. I have to ask you, what else have you done for the first time this week?
Gone outside to play with my daughter.
Oh, wow.
In the garden.
Brilliant.
It's been lovely and warm and she loves the heat as well. So
Yeah. Well, we should explain that because you're just back from maternity, aren't you?
yes, been back 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
And it's been really good. I kind of just got straight back in.
Yeah.
And loving it, yeah. It's really good. Keep myself busy. So I'm not worrying too much about her. But yeah, it's great to be back.
Yeah.
And I feel like everything's come back to us quite quickly.
Brilliant.
So
And a
yeah,
little
really
girl or a boy?
A little girl.
Little girl?
11 months.
11
yes.
months. And what's amazed you about her so far then in the 11 months? Tell us a bit about it.
She's just a little character. I don't I'm first time mum, so I don't think anyone kind of tells you
I agree.
how to
I agree.
raise a baby. I mean, we can only do our best, but I just feel like she's a little character already. Got a bit of cheekiness to her. Got me wrapped around her little finger. But yeah, it's amazing. Absolutely love it.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Brings back a lot of memories, doesn't it, Jeff?
Doesn't it? Time passes very quickly as well.
Very, very quickly.
It does,
Make sure you
yeah.
enjoy all of it.
Enjoy every moment. Brilliant. Okay, well, look, Jeff, we're going to get onto the questions very shortly, and there's a few in there about markets. But if I noticed when I logged into my app just yesterday that we've had a good couple of weeks, haven't we, on the market?
We have.
That's my layman's. It's just a good couple of weeks is about the best I can get into. But you give us the backdrop. Why has it been a good couple of weeks? What's been going
Well,
on?
I suppose what we've seen is a bit of stabilisation in the volatility that we've seen. And as a result, we've seen primarily equity markets start to turn around, perform a little bit better. So 2 weeks of potentially positive gains, depending on where we get to today, which has been good to see, good for everybody to see. And I suppose it speaks to one of those things that we've talked about on the podcast about events happen, but it's important to try and just take that step back, stay invested, focus on that longer term goal. And that's certainly what we've seen in equity markets. Probably more mixed performances in other asset classes. We look at sovereign bonds, they've continued to decline based on the things that we've been talking about recently and maybe for many months as well, inflation and interest rates. And then the other, I suppose, factor in the background still remains just what's happening with energy and commodity prices still continue to rise. And that maybe ties into some of the questions that we've got later on in terms of the Chancellor, the spring statement, etc. But we'll come on to this. Yeah. So, a good period for asset markets, for equities in particular.
Brilliant.
Over the recent 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well done to you and your team for delivering us the good returns that we expect of you now, Jeff.
Thank you.
I have to say, we do expect that of you.
Thank you.
Right, let's get into some of your questions. And thank you, as I said before, for so much for sending them in. We've had a load of great questions coming. A lot of them are around tax year end, because, of course, we are approaching the end of the tax year, which means there are various allowances and things like that you need to be aware of. So let's dive in then with Courtney's question. And Courtney says, I'm not really anywhere close to being in a position to fill my ISA, so why does tax year end matter to me? Hayley, I'll come to you for that question. Why would Courtney be interested in tax year end if she's not in a position to fill that ISA completely?
So I think if you kind of look at it two ways. You've got some circumstances where you can fill it in one go. Other instances where people have been kind of gradually saving over the 12-month period. But I think if you're kind of looking to, you're kind of 2 weeks away now from tax year end, rather than looking to fill it, what can you contribute to it? So even if it's £100, is it £200, £1,000, do what you can. Your ISA allowances are there, they come every single year. So even if it's a small amount, it's worth utilising some sort of allowance so it doesn't disappear.
Because at the end of the tax year, you can't roll it over; it's gone.
No, can't roll it
so
over.
in the ISA allowance, £20,000.
£20,000.
So even if you're using half of that, a quarter of that,
Absolutely.
whatever you can use, whatever you don't use, you've lost it. So
Exactly.
even putting in an extra few £100 or a couple of £1,000s at this time of
100%.
year is worth doing to get the growth that, or to have the opportunity to get
To
the
have
growth.
the opportunity for growth,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. You're
Tax-free
giving
growth.
yourself that opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's lead on from that question, and then I'll stick with you, Hayley, for this one if I can. It's from Adrian, who just says, how close to the tax year end, and you mentioned a couple of weeks away, but how close to the very end of it can I invest into my TP account?
So this is actually really good for those who have left tax year end, to the last minute. Impulse Save is a fantastic feature that we've got within the client site and the app, and you can actually impulse save until 11:59 on the 5th of April.
Right.
So even if you get to the 5th, which is the day before tax year end, and think, oh, I haven't done it, I was meant to do this, which we do get very regularly, you can literally log onto your app and it takes a minute to transfer the money
I
over.
was going to say, it's really quick. Like,
Yeah.
I use Impulse Save, and it is literally a 2-minute job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really handy as well, because my card's saved already,
Yeah.
so
100%.
just select it.
It's the equivalent of buying something on Amazon, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just literally go in here,
Yeah.
if you want to put in 50 quid, 100 quid, whatever you want, from a pound upwards, and
Yeah.
bang, in you go. And you can do it up until a minute to midnight.
A minute to midnight.
At the end of the
It's
tax
pretty
year,
good,
which is
and
5th of
that's
April,
utilised.
right?
Yeah.
So you're really, really easy. It's a good question from Franklin, who says, look, I've already filled up my allowances in the tax year. So what can I do? And I guess the answer to someone is just relax.
Yeah. Sit back, relax, log into your account,
Yeah.
look at how much has, been invested. Yeah.
Give yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah.
You've done it. You've
Well
prepared.
done.
You're sorted.
I mean, it's worth just saying, when Franklin says my allowances, I mean, there's obviously the ISA allowance, but there is also the pension allowance as well. I don't know from the question whether Franklin's used the pensions
Both of
element of
them.
that, but you could also top your pension up, couldn't you?
Yeah, well, you get it's either your annual salary if lower than 40,000 or
Yeah.
40,000 annual allowance for a pension. So don't just necessarily think about your ISA. If you've got a pension, which maybe you've got a workplace pension, which are very popular at the moment, kind of everyone's enrolled over the age of 22, or even just a personal pension where you're not actually drawn down out of it and looking to save a little bit more for retirement. Again, you don't have to use the full £40,000. If you've got £40,000 on the 5th of April, just spare cash, you're doing quite well. But if you've got even £1,000, a couple of £100, stick it in. And again, for the growth on the investment, you can log in, use the app and client site to see what's going on with it.
Because people might forget the pension in the way around tax year, because we do talk about ISAs a lot and all that,
a lot.
but that pension,
And I
because
suppose
it's a
that's the
monthly
thing,
direct
it's the-
debit through the pension, isn't it, through your pay?
Yeah.
It's to plan for it.
yeah.
To think about it. So
100%.
even if you're there, think about the future.
Yeah.
Kind of think about differently for the next tax year. So if you're in that position, just I think it's always planning, thinking about if you need advice as well. If you've used all of your allowances, maybe there is need for some advice as well as to what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just thinking about once you get into April the 6th, brand new tax year, just around the table generally, are you kind of steady through the year putting in, or do you put as much in as you can at the start of the tax year to give yourself the longest time for it to grow, or are you more sort of slow, or steady away just a bit every month for the entire year? What do you tend to do?
For me, it's every month, just using direct debit, and then as others have said, if you've got something else, you can use Impulse Save.
Yeah, along
Just
the way.
top it up. Yeah.
Is that the same for you too?
Yeah, same for me. Direct debit every month, and then any extra cash kind of end of the
Yeah.
month. Impulse Save straight in.
Yeah, same direct debit, and then Impulse Save, because it kind of, you get a chance to look at your income
Yeah.
and what you can spare. And whatever I can, I just put it straight in.
It's amazing what
and then
you
it's
can spare.
done and dusted kind of thing, so I don't have to worry about it. You got to plan a bit more now.
I feel like
as
your
well.
life's probably just got a lot more expensive in the last year.
Oh, very expensive. It has cost us a lot of money, but when I can save, I can, because it's probably going to go at her in the future as well.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I remember
Yeah.
when I set my ISA up, I even called it kids because you just think, well, it's not going to be for me, so I'll never get to see that. Right, got a question from Carmelia who says, what's your top tip for tax year end? So we've kind of touched on some of it there, but I'll just go around and Jeff, have you got a particular top tip for tax year end? That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. I'll not even go there.
It could have gone wrong halfway through that if I wasn't careful.
I think for me, it's don't leave it to the last minute.
Yeah.
But at least if you do, we've got a solution that solves that problem for you. So you can use impulse save if you do need to do it, but try and plan it out a few days beforehand, because you never know when you go on to do something and I've forgotten my password, forgotten the login details, and then it's how do you get those to move some of the money. So a little bit of planning, but then if it's a real problem,
you need to get
use
a push
impulse
phone,
save.
Jeff, that's got like a face login, that kind of thing. Passwords
It's too much for me.
Yeah, I've just forgot my face. What people do forget their password, like Jeff? There's a way that they can get in touch and get their password?
Yeah, so we've got a few different methods of communication into the team. So we've got a live chat feature, incoming phone calls, secure messages through their client site as well. The live chat, if they're logging on the app, it's very simple to use. They can literally click on a button and they come straight through to the team. Again, for a phone call, the number is literally there. You click on it and it dials straight through. So really straightforward.
Yeah. And so your tips for tax year end would be sort of the same as Jeff's then?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think I would also say is don't be daunted by the values. Because I think a lot of either younger investors or potentially older people who are maybe in retirement but not actually taking an income and things like that, is you see kind of £20,000 and think, where on earth am I going to get that sort of cash from? I'm the same as you. I've got a young child. I've got another one on the way. It's not spare money. It's tight, and you kind of plan what you spend in each and every month. So I think just don't be daunted and think, well, I've got to use £20,000 or what's the point in doing it? Any little contribution is going to be a massive help for you moving forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, try not to panic
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like, we've got our teams ready, and a couple of them are working quite late as well. So, like, getting after work kind of thing, like, they are there on hand. So definitely just, use that service.
Yeah, we're available from 7 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, and Monday through till Friday. And the next 2 weekends, we're actually working 10 till 2 on Saturday and Sunday as well. Just for those people who have or wanting to utilise allowances kind of closer to the deadline.
And I think also maybe I would say as well is don't be afraid to take advice. If you've got an advisor,
100%.
speak to your advisor. If you haven't got an advisor, speak to us. We can put you in touch with an advisor. It's a good time of year just to think about, have I made the most of what opportunities I've had over the last year? And if you haven't, maybe get a bit of advice, as you said, Jeff, so that for the next year you're sort of in a good position. So there you go. There's some good tips. I hope that was useful. Right, let's move on to, we've had quite a few questions in on cost of living, which is obviously a big topic at the moment for everybody. And by the way, I should just say we did the podcast last week, so episode 109 on cost of living and petrol prices and that sort of thing. So it might be worth having a little look back at that as well, for a few tips and a bit of advice around that as well. But anyway, let's have a look at a couple of questions specifically on this topic. And it was the week of the Chancellor's spring statement. So Tommy's got a question, which is, what did you make of the spring statement and its impact it would have on the cost of living crisis? Maybe before we just get into Tommy's question specifically, what were the sort of main, highlights or main headlines that came out of the spring statement, Jeff, for you?
I suppose if you take a step back from it and we think, what did he really talk about? There was something for most people in it, but really not a lot in terms of going to help.
Yeah.
And I think, so if we think about there's a 5p duty reduction on petrol, there's a VAT reduction or a zero rated VAT on some energy efficiency installation, so if you're going to install solar panels or things like that. There was an increase to the household fund that was set up in November. And then probably the other bit was just this indication of jam tomorrow in terms of the income tax, the 1p reduction from 20 to 19%. And then we also had the equalisation of the national insurance with income tax, so that 3,000 uplift in terms of that. And that's probably the one bit that's most meaningful for everyone. But I suppose I think that the conversation around it has been that it did something but didn't really do a lot in terms of addressing the high prices that we're seeing at this point in time. And it's a very difficult thing to address because of how the price rises are being caused. It's really a supply issue that we've got. We had a supply issue as a result of COVID, and now we've got a commodity price supply issue and squeeze that comes of that. So I think for me, it's also looking forward to that tax decrease that will come at some time in this Parliament, but also maybe to the next couple of weeks thinking about how the government will set out around the energy security, what they'll think about that, and how that may be incentivised as well, which could be helpful.
And just on the, we'll maybe come on to a couple of those points in a sec, but just on the income tax reduction in the basic rate from 2019 and 2024, that will also mean that you'll get 19% tax relief on your pension versus 20, so a bit less tax relief, so you'd have to put a bit more in. So just to go back to what we were saying, it's worth almost,
that's a good point.
Almost putting a bit more in if you can now, while there's that extra bit of tax relief available for the next maybe 18 months, couple of years or so until we get to that point. But just on the reduction in, or the raising of the threshold on NI, and the reduction of the duty on the fuel. I mean, this is coming in, certainly the fuel duty came in the same day, NI to come, but we haven't yet had the national insurance increase, have we? That people are going to be feeling, and the energy price cap hasn't. That increase hasn't been felt yet either. So, it's Tommy's question. There's a bit of, if you like, pain still to be felt, really, in terms of price rises coming through.
So I think if we look at the other report that came out in the same day, which has maybe not got the same attention, was the Office for Budget Responsibility's detailed analysis of the economy, and that really sets out that detail in terms of the issues that everyone will face, both in April of the energy price cap moving between 40 and 50%, and how that feeds through to energy prices. But then when you read through the document, there's an analysis that talks about the impact that potentially comes in the second half of this year as well, when if energy prices stay where they are today, you'll have to have that price cap move up again. So the document itself speaks about inflation in the UK probably peaking towards the end of this year, whereas previously most people would have been expecting it to be around this point in time. So the cost of living impact from an inflation perspective will remain an issue for, I would suggest, the remainder of this year at least.
Well, that feeds nicely into Sam's question, Jeff, who's got a nice easy question for you, which is, when will inflation ease? And what can I do in the meantime? Well, you've slightly answered the question about when it's going to ease, if that's the right word. What can Sam do in the meantime?
The thing there is that we can't forecast when it will ease. We can just look and think about the dynamics that are there in the background that suggest there may be the opportunity for inflation to ease into the future. We are at very elevated levels of inflation relative to the last 30, 40 years. So we have to go back a long time to see similar inflation rates. So there is, we could see it easing, but will it come down to the levels we've been used to 3 years ago? That's debatable, but something that will certainly be front and centre of our thoughts over the coming months. I think what can you do in the meantime? As much as we've been saying, budgeting, planning, being sensible about how one uses your cash, and that ties back into one of the things that the Bank of England have been talking about, in that high rates of inflation typically have an impact on how we all consume, and we may consume slightly less. That in and of itself can actually help with the inflation backdrop. So there's a balancing act to be struck between, I suppose, consumption, saving, and expenditure.
Yes, well, there is one other way to deal with inflation if you're feeling it in your pocket, and that's through your pay, which leads into Alwyn's question. Did you see what I did there? Little segue.
Very good, very good.
Because Alwyn's written in to say, should I be asking for a pay rise right now? So a nice easy question for you, Simon. Should we be asking for a pay rise right now?
I mean, it's entirely up to you.
Very diplomatic.
Yeah, I mean, if you feel that you deserve a pay rise, then I would say go for it. Like, have your points to why you should get a pay rise. If now's the right time, then no time like the present, I guess.
There's a 50-50 possibility. It's either going to be yes or no, isn't it?
Yes.
Might as well give it a go.
Well, there we are. I think we all sound like we're yes. Alwyn, the answer I think is
have
yes.
a discussion.
And if you don't get one, don't blame us. Anyone seen Daniel Harrison lately, by the way? I think form an orderly queue behind me, please. All right. Well, that was good. Let's move on to. I'll jump around a bit. Actually, we'll come back to. We've got a couple of questions about Russia and Ukraine. I'll come to you for those in a sec, Jeff. But I just want to flick back to the idea of the tech and tax year end, or taps year end even. Catherine's got a question here, which is, what's the best way to use the app, the True Potential app, around tax year ends? You've kind of touched on impulse save.
Yeah.
And is that literally the best way? Is there anything else you would suggest?
Personally,
Yeah.
I would say so. It's very quick. It's really easy to use. It's pretty much instant. It's not going to take you a great deal of time.
Yeah.
And what I would also say is utilise the goal settings within the client site as well. So you've now kind of made your payment. You've utilised your allowances.
Yeah.
What you should then be looking at is to say, right, okay, where am I at with my goals? Am I on track? It's very simple to see within the client site. You can see kind of how far behind you are or how in front you are, if you're doing really well with your savings. And it just can kind of really give you a good overview of where you are at. It also might kind of make you realise that something that you've planned for is completely unachievable, or you might have passed it, or not necessarily relevant. So just kind of reviewing where you're at with anything like that as well.
Penelope's got a question, which is your favourite part of the app?
Ooh, okay.
So, well, I know what mine is. I'm going to claim rewards, by the way, straight away.
Okay. I'm going to be controversial and have two favourite things.
Oh, go on then.
First of all, I would say impulse save, just because, again, as I explained earlier, I've got a young family and it's very easy for me to use it, and also really be building on the future that I would love to achieve by some point of retirement. But also the goal setting. It's not necessarily for me personally, it's my family, my home life and my kids and everything like that. It's more, where am I at and what can I do to give them the best opportunities and the best future for them is kind of what I like about that as well.
Yeah. What about you, Sunak? What's your
Yeah,
favourite thing?
I was just gonna say, like, I completely agree. You know, before having a baby, it would have been the rewards, but now you kind of have to think, right, okay, what's the future gonna hold?
Yeah.
And that's the main focus, is when I can save, I'm gonna put it through impulse save. And then with the goal as well, it's kind of it gives you a rough idea with how it's going to reflect, and how much you might then need, if you've got like a certain target. You know, like who knows what university fees are going to be like when she turns that age. But like impulse save for me, it's definitely like the go-to, and the fact it takes 2 minutes. I don't get much time. When I go home, it's only when she's asleep, and then at that point, it's about 9.
I'm imagining you holding a baby and doing an impulse save, an impulse nappy and an impulse save at the same time. Brilliant. I also like the news feed, because I get to see Jeff's videos, just like the pop up, log in and bang, there's like morning markets straight away.
I think for me it's around impulse save, but the goal setting is, we can't underestimate how important that is, because it's so easy to not think about your goal. Whereas if you've got a target that you want to aim at, it's like, even if you're training for the Great North Run or whatever, if you know that's there, you're more likely to try and commit to it. And it keeps you honest. I think that's the thing. I've said I want to save that amount for this event, and it just forces you to keep doing it.
Absolutely. Right, John's got a question. What should I top up first, my ISA or my pension? I guess the honest answer is you should probably take some advice on that and see what, depending on what your goal is. But from a personal point of view, what would you top up first, ISA or pension? Have you got a particular preference?
Personally, ISA.
Yeah, you go for your ISA first.
Just because I've got a workplace pension which I play into, and my employer pays into. You get tax relief in that, and I think ISA's more short-term goals. So I'm 27 in June. I will not be able to access my pension for quite a few years. Little goals, family holidays, house payments, car payments. It's for me personally, it's just more beneficial to impulse save and utilise that ISA allowance and a pension.
And it's the flexibility that gives you as well. You can use that and get access to it, whereas the pension,
although from a tax point of view, obviously on a pension, you get the extra uplifts.
You do.
On the tax relief
I
upfront,
suppose that's where it's about getting the balance right. And what's right for you, what's the short-term goal, what's the long-term goal, and back to your original statement, I suppose, what's your situation, and how does that play into it, because there'll be different things to take into consideration.
And as you said, I suppose in your pension, you're already on a sort of schedule with your pay and your direct debits coming in each month. So your pension in your head is sort of like, I've taken care of that, and I might do the occasional top up when I can. But my ISA, unless you've got a direct debit set up, wouldn't have necessarily the same automatic. You can just forget about it. So Was that the same for you, Simon? Would you go for ISA
Yeah,
first?
I mean, again, same. Like we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with like ISA, like it would be nice to kind of like get something
Yeah.
like even short term, like you
Yeah.
said, like a little holiday. And you just know like that it's there and it's accessible and
Yeah.
easy to get to kind of thing. So yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you for that. Let's go to a question that's come in from Judith and Phil. They're talking about the tax treatment of a withdrawal. I think so. If they were to take out a lump sum of their pension or their ISA with True Potential, what would be the tax treatment on that we would do versus say what they would have to claim from HMRC? How does that work?
So they'll get the first 25% tax free.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from that, it will be charged at kind of your normal income tax rate. It's kind of difficult, so it's a couple of different options that can happen off the back of it. You can also, first of all, before going any further, go advise for drawdown or go non-advise if you're happy and comfortable with what you're doing. With regards to your actual tax code, if we are supplied with a tax code before we process the payment, it will be charged at just like your normal income tax rate. If we do not have that tax code before, we will just basically put the payment through and it'll be charged at the basic rate, meaning HMRC will have to be refunding you the month later I think it comes in. It's dead simple to get your tax code. Just kind of phone HMRC before going ahead, supplying that as quick as possible, and it just saves any lags in payments or having to chase money and things like that from HMRC.
Okay, thank you. And obviously, Judith and Phil, if you need a further conversation about that, you can speak to our team here or to your advisor who can give you sort of more information and maybe some advice around that as well. Absolutely. Right, let's go back to the Russia and Ukraine situation, which is very sadly still ongoing. Question from Richard for you, Jeff, which is, what are True Potential doing, if you like, to manage the risk in the portfolios around what's happening in global political situation? And then I'll maybe just combine that with Jenna's question, which is, have the markets now stabilised around that we saw a lot of volatility? Is that eased off now?
Yeah, I think maybe two ways to come at that. If we think about volatility and we look at how we price volatility and implied volatility, we look at something called the VIX index, which gives you an idea. Colloquially it's called the fear index in market terms, and that certainly did ramp quite materially on the 24th of February. Peaked out at around sort of 36, 38, but it's gradually come back all the way back to sort of a low 20s at the moment. So the volatility has started to come out in the background if you look at the VIX index as one way of assessing that. Where you've continued to see a little bit of volatility, however, is in treasury markets, sovereign bond markets, because of that problem that we were discussing earlier of inflation and interest rates. So still a bit of volatility there. In terms of the portfolios themselves and what they've been doing, I think there's two levels to really think about there. There's the actions that we take as an investment team in terms of the allocations, but then there's the actions that the managers are taking within those portfolios as well. And we've seen I think over time, we've seen our managers be very short duration. What do I mean by that? Having less exposure to longer dated sovereign bonds, which helps in the inflation backdrop that we're certainly seeing. An increasing use of alternative assets to diversify the portfolios is very much what we want to see, and managers have been doing that. So if we think about how that has been a benefit in the period that we've been through, actually some of those alternative products have earned positive returns in a negative market environment. So we're thinking there about things like trend products, we're thinking about some of the currency strategies that we have, and those have been beneficial to the portfolios. And I think the other aspect of it is just the ongoing discussion that we have with managers, given what we're talking about here, the inflation backdrop. How do you ensure that you've got assets in a portfolio that give you a real return in that type of environment? So we have seen an increased use of REITs, so real estate investment trusts, that typically have an inflation protection to them. Quality in terms of a factor, in that you're looking at companies that are able to pass through pricing increases to the end consumer without a material change in demand. So there's many different levers that can be pulled to help the portfolios navigate their way through that, but the portfolios aren't going to be immune to that backdrop that we've to deal with. But certainly the tools are there. Diversification is really crucial, and we've really seen that over the course of the first 3 months of this year, really, in terms of the various different trends. And to try and predict one, yet alone several, is very difficult. But having diversification of views, diversification of implementation, is the factor that I believe minimises that risk,
Gives
or
you
at
the
least
best chance.
dampens it down.
Yeah. Good. Okay, thank you for that, Jeff. Right, let's move on to Andrew's question. And someone, I'll come to you for this one. Andrew says, what's the average wait time for my funds to be transferred after I complete my direct offer?
Yeah, so with the digital direct offer, and I think it kind of goes into Horace's question as well, with what products can be transferred and what the benefits are. So with our digital direct offer process, the good thing about it is that you can do it any time. When you get back from work, you can do it like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and it literally takes about 10 minutes for you transfer your ISA from the third party provider to us. And what the client site then does, it kind of processes everything. So the next working day when we're all in the office, it's already kind of sitting there ready to be processed and sent off to that provider. And then we process it straight away, which is great. It's then when we send it to the provider for the request of the funds. At the minute, I think it's around 2 to 3 weeks. But again, it just depends on the provider. Like what's good with True Potential is that because it comes in, it gets processed and sent off straight away. And we use something called Origo as well, so that's a lot quicker. So 2 to 3 weeks for the funds to be sent, and then a further 3 to 5 working days for the payment to actually hit our account. On things like that. But again, with the digital direct offer, we've just heard really good things, is that it can be done at any time. Like I said, like I won't have time during the day, and when I do, it's at night time. And there's always information at hand as well, especially with with portfolio you want to invest in. We'll have a lot of fund fact sheets, information on that, so you're not going to be like stuck in any way. It kind of is it is 10 minutes. It can be done in about 5-6 if you know what you're doing.
But it's quick. I mean, the point is it's quick and easy to do. And as Daniel always says when he's talking about the tech, we build the tech from the client's perspective,
100%,
working back from there. So it's designed to be as straightforward and as easy as it can, because no one's got loads of time to be fiddling about doing stuff. You've got to be as easy as it can. So
we've tried to make it like as easy as possible for the clients, and it's been a great success so far.
Brilliant.
With it, so
excellent. Well, thank you for Andrew and Horace's question that you addressed in there as well. So that's really good. Well, look, I think that's been a good Q&A session. I've enjoyed that. Lots of different topics we've touched on. So thanks everyone for sending your questions in. And as I said last time we did a Q&A, you don't need to wait for a Q&A podcast to send your questions in. We're here all the time. You can send them in the comments box. You can do it through secure message or the old-fashioned give us a call on the phone, and we'll have a chat with you as well. So please do keep your questions coming in. We'll do another Q&A podcast in a few weeks' time. Right, actually, before we finish, Jeff, I need to just give you your little prize. You presenter of the week. Now, I should just say, I'm a little bit protective of this sort of thing. This is for morning markets. So you win the award. This doesn't include the podcast. Just before you get carried away.
You
Jeff.
get one for the podcast.
Well, I don't think we're doing them for the podcast. I'm not quite sure why. I'm taking that a bit personally. But anyway, for Morning Markets, you are Preferentially Presenter of the Month. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
Gorgeous.
You can,
well done.
hang that on the wall somewhere in
Take
your
this
house.
up to put in the wall.
That's right. Yes, indeed. So the weekend. I don't know. I've not looked at the weather for the weekend, but let's hope it's going to be good. Does anyone know if it's going to be good?
It is going to be good.
Right. Well, there you go then. So, what are you going to do? And I know what you're doing. You're in the garden, aren't you? Back with your 11-month-old little girl. So that's your weekend taken care of.
Yes, can't wait.
What about you, Hayley?
It actually is my son's second birthday on Saturday, so we are having a little tea party for him with some family, and then Sunday is Mother's Day, so I plan on sitting with my feet up and doing nothing.
Well, quite right too. Jeff.
It's a good reminder about Mother's Day.
There you go. Quickly get that in for all the dads that potentially might have
I'm off
forgotten.
to a petrol station to buy a car and some very expensive petrol.
I'll go and sort that out tomorrow. I think I'll head out into the garden, and I might even turn the barbecue on. If it's a nice
There we
day.
go.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got Jeff with these. I can sing with a hat on and a
Hat
beer,
on,
and
yeah.
oh, there you go. Well, I think you deserve that, Jeff. So I hope you enjoy your
Thank you very
your
much.
barbecue. Very good.
What about yourself? What are you?
Well, I'm at the children here. I'm at a kids party tomorrow, for a load of 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, which is kind of my level. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. And who knows, I might end up in the garden myself. I've got to cut the grass, Jeff. I've got to get that lawnmower
It's
out.
time to start that.
It is, yeah. So there you go. Lots of garden activity this weekend. All right. Well, look, thank you very much for your questions. Thanks very much for sending them in and for watching the podcast as well. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button because you'll see more of Jeff and his team battling it out to be presenter of the month on morning markets for the next month. So who knows what will happen, but do tune into that, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Subscribing to the True Potential YouTube channel is quick and easy. Simply go to the channel on your desktop or through the YouTube app on your phone and click the subscribe button. You can then press the notification bell symbol if you wish to be notified as and when new videos are released. Doing this is a great way to keep yourself updated with market developments and personal finance insights. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed, and we look forward to continuing to help you do more with your money.